Okay, welcome and good evening to our December 16th meeting of the Legal Contracts and Board Policy Committee meeting. It is 5:36 p.m. and in attendance we have, I am Dr. Molnar, we have Co-Chair Sykes, we have Member Harrison, Attorney Kapchar, and our Superintendent Robinson, and Chief of Staff Angela Carter. We are going to start with the previous meeting minutes from our last meeting, which was November 19th. Are there any comments for the meeting minutes?
No comments, no changes, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. And with that, we will move on to Section 2, Public Participation. There is no one signed up. So we are at Section 3. Policy readings, we have no items here on the agenda for a first read left from our last meeting. So we have moved rapidly all the way now to Section 4, Roundtable. First item in Roundtable is Section 401, dress and grooming policies. This is on our agenda today because of the last few years we've been suspending part of the dress code. When we suspended the dress code this year, we said, how about instead of continuing to suspend the dress code, we come up with a permanent dress code, and we're having the conversation now as families are doing holiday shopping and buying items. And so I believe the administration has some updates for us on policies 5511 and 551101.
So we're going to ask Dr. Lash to come up, and if you could talk about the difference between 5511 and 5501, and then make the request that we're asking about as relates to 5501, and then we'll talk about the addition that we're making to 5511. So talk about 5501 first, what we want to request.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Good evening. And so, yes, Chief of Staff Carter, as you stated, the policy 5511.01 is the school uniforms for grades K through 8, and policy 5511 is dress and grooming. So first thing, I just want to make sure that I note the difference that we have always had a dress and grooming policy that speaks to dress code, and the uniform policy, which is the 5511.01, speaks specifically to school uniforms for students in grades K through 8. And so when we look at policy 5511, dress and grooming, it is pretty comprehensive in what it requires for head, face, shirts, hoodies, and the bottoms and shoes, belts. And the addition, we had some questions around Crocs. Our students love Crocs. I have a pair in my office that are very stylish, I might add. And so we did add some information there to allow our students to wear Crocs, or you will see closed-toed foam or rubber clogs with or without ventilation holes. Some Crocs do not have holes. And an adjustable strap are permitted. And so for wear, however, the strap must be worn. It must be in what's called sport mode. So you will see that addition there. For policy 5511.01, school uniforms for grades K through 8, as Dr. Molnar stated, this policy specific to uniforms is what has been suspended since COVID. And because it's been suspended, I believe we are asking to permanently remove this policy for school uniforms, grades K to 8.
To repeal. Mm-hmm.
Okay, is there anything else to highlight?
Nope, that was it. To repeal the uniform policy, and then the one update so far with the grooming and dress code policy.
So it sounds like khakis are out, Crocs are in. So are these policies ready to come to the board, or do they need more time before they would come to the board? And first of all, thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the recommendations. And I hope that families also appreciate having this extra time to prepare, even if the policies aren't enacted on immediately, just to know what might be coming down the line. But what is the recommendation coming from administration?
Thank you, Member Molinar, Dr. Molinar. So the recommendation is that we would, as Dr. Lash stated, that we would, repeal the school uniform policy, but that we would keep the dress and grooming policy.
And I think, Dr. Lash, we talked about maybe allowing us to have one more go-around looking at the dress and grooming, and then if we could bring it to January's, and then look at moving it. But we just want to look one more time just to make sure that we addressed all of the concerns that have been coming up as it relates to dress and grooming, just to make sure there's clarity. And so that's the one additional add, but we want to make sure that that's the only thing that we needed to add. So we do want to have one more time with our school leaders and talking with other administrators around some concerns that have been coming up before we say this is it. So one more time before we say take it to the board.
Thank you. Any discussion from the committee?
Madam Chair, no, I think, as I understand it, you're just saying to eliminate the uniform requirements for 12 through 8. So I'm thinking that you come to that conclusion because the parents have indicated that that would be their preference, and
Yes.
that's what we're doing now.
We sent out a survey, right?
Yeah, so I remember the survey.
Yes.
To parents, and I think the students had an opportunity to weigh in.
Yes, Member Sykes, Co-Chair Sykes, to your question, we did ask our families, we asked our students as well, and I won't tell you a very lively email that I got back from a student and what his response was, but our parents, about 70% of our parents that responded to the survey said yes, they would like to see the school uniform be permanently removed or repealed. And for our students, we sent the survey to our students via their Chromebook, so we sent it directly to them thanks to Mr. Hanshaw with technology. And we sent that to students in grades 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th because our students that are in grades 4, K through 4, would not have known a uniform policy, but our 5th graders would have, and so that's who we asked. And 91% of our students that responded said they would like to see the uniform policy be done away with.
Okay.
All right, well, that sounded like an overwhelming amount. So is it the recommendation then of administration that we bring 5511 to our January meeting for a first reading, or to leave in discussion for the January meeting?
For a first reading. A first reading. So we would be prepared for it to be a first reading at the January meeting.
Yeah.
So skip the discussion. We'll do it.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I would move that we forward this to our regular agenda for first reading.
Okay, thank you. And then the repeal of the uniforms, that is actually separate. So we would take that to the January meeting to repeal the 551101.
Madam Chair, yeah, they seem to go hand in hand.
Yeah. Yeah.
That we would repeal one policy and implement the other one.
All right. All right. Any other discussion on dress code? All right, thank you. Moving on to our next item. We have, it looks like 9150, our school visitors policy. Administration, I believe, is bringing us updates on that.
I'm going to ask, because I know one of the concerns was regarding whether or not Raptor pulls other information other than sex offender information. So, Mr. Hanshaw, if you can come forward and talk about the Raptor system and the agreement that we have with the Raptor organization regarding our usage and what will be limited to as it relates to those coming in and out. And then we were talking about our administrative guidelines as well, and one of the suggestions was to make sure that we made known within the administrative guidelines who would need to utilize the Raptor system upon entry into the building and when the Raptor system would be utilized. And so that's two things that we clarified within our AG guidelines as well. But I'll have Zach go ahead and talk about
Hey.
the questions that.
Good evening, board members. I'm Zach Hanshaw. I'm the executive director of the IT department here. I'm going to kind of open the floor to see what technical questions I can help alleviate in regards to the Raptor system. But as Ms. Carter mentioned, Raptor is a very large company that you can do a lot of things with. Different modules you can purchase, everything from visitor management to volunteer management to doing quite a few other things around Safe Schools. They're a large safety and security company. The module specifically that we purchased is just the visitor management system, and the only thing it does is it goes out to the National Sex Offender Registry database upon a scan, and it scans to see if you have that check. Now, whenever it refers to like other databases, what we can do in the school system is we can add an individual note on a person or an alert. Let's say, for example, little Johnny's father comes in, they have a custody order that little Johnny's father can't pick him up. Little Johnny comes in, scans, it would pop up saying, hey, his father is not allowed to pick him up. So I just want to clarify, because I remember there was a question, it might have been you, Reverend Harrison, about that. There is other modules that can be purchased through Raptor, but it's limited to just that. So kind of turn it over to you all, see if there's any other like specific technical questions around the system itself. More than happy to answer.
Good afternoon, Mr. Henshaw. I have a question about the notes. I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
The modules that we purchase, well, let me do the notes first. Is there the capability of putting any other notes in there, and do we have a policy on what notes can be in there and what can't?
Yeah, good question. There is no current policy on what can be added in the notes at this point, but the notes would just be associated to that parent. So if school would add in a note, for some reason, it would pop up. It could be a note regarding custody issues or anything the school could put in there. Just like in eSchool, you can add in notes to individual family members or anything like that related to custody issues and so forth.
Okay. So the Raptor, who manages that? And is there, okay, so we purchased this module. Mm-hmm. Is there any way to turn other filters on to get information that we possibly don't need?
No, not unless we'd buy additional modules.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Thank you.
Yes.
So, Madam Chair, my question did not deal with technical issues. I was just concerned about at what age are we going to start to look at having individuals?
We discussed this, and we said they would need to be 18 years old in order to have to provide an ID.
Okay.
And then it would be used during operational school hours.
Okay. Yeah, Madam Chair, that was my primary question. I think except when we talked also about the individuals using the learning, the after school, whether or not we would also use the system there if they were using the
Do you mean like that they have activities after school?
Right, the actual, after school.
No, ma'am.
The facilities after school at all.
It would
So
just
this
be
is
doing the
doing
working
regular school
business hours.
Yeah, okay.
Any other? I have a couple of questions. It sounds like you did make at least a draft of the administrative guidelines. Do you have those for us to kind of get an idea of what they are? And while you're passing those out, I know one of the questions I had, because it was during school business day, is whether or not the system would be used during voting.
So we did talk about that with legal as well, and we added in here, in our administrative guidelines, is that this administrative, hold on a second. This administrative guideline does not apply to those entering school premises for the purpose of voting, and that we would have other systems in place for voting, like we would reach out to Mr. Jones to make sure that we have safety and security at our buildings that usually do not have safety, like some of our elementary buildings. We would make sure that we would have safety team members on site to ensure voters are going to the designated areas to where they're supposed to go for voting. So we would just make sure that parameters are in place during days that people are on site for elections.
And I think, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I think the next couple of the next calendar, I mean, we always have voting, but the next calendar, the major voting would be 4 years from now in terms of a presidential election for the large one. But the smaller elections that we have, sometimes the kids, the teachers are here, the staff is here, but not necessarily the students. For the one coming up next year, I don't remember if we will have students in the building or not for in March.
That would be the May primary.
The May primary. Yeah, I don't think we have kids then, but I'll verify that to make sure. But if we do have kids on those particular days, that's when we would have to add the additional safety supports. Because typically they have, well, we don't choose the area of the building, but the election, the county or the city election officials will come in and choose exactly where people will vote in the building, and then we would work with them in collaboration with them to make sure that we have people on staff, our safety team members on staff, to direct them in and out of that particular designated area, whatever that might be.
Yes, so I do believe that for the May primary, we do have school planned with students in the building for that day. I know it's been an issue the past few years. Parents have reached out to me, teachers and administrators have reached out to me every year that we have had school during the primary election because of concerns of extra people in the building, people using the bathrooms, voters, right? How long can you wait in line and not use a bathroom? But at the same time, it is difficult sometimes for teachers to feel comfortable letting students go to the bathroom by themselves because they don't know who else is in the building and things like that. So I know that it has been a big concern for several years. Raptor aside, whether or not we use Raptor, just having kids in the building during the election, especially the elementary buildings with our smallest children who sometimes can get lost on their way to the bathroom just on their own.
And we can look and work on it early enough, but if we do have to move the day or change a day, then we would have to go back to the union on that, because we would have to make that agreement and then we bring it to the board for the board to vote. So we can do that in January, looking at May primary, which is, I think we did that last year.
It's May 6th.
Thank you, and thank you for all of this information. For the committee, would we like time to review this, Do we have more questions? How do we feel?
No, Madam Chair, I have no additional questions.
Okay. And Member Harrison, I know you're not technically on the committee, but you are a board member here, so I want to give you an opportunity.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm looking at the state ID or driver's license. Those are the two IDs, and then if they don't have that, there's a large number of our parents without a state ID or a driver's license, as evident when we look at what's happening with our voter rolls. So how do we accommodate for that? Have you thought about that with the time that it takes to process that?
So I can comment on the technical piece, and I would ask Mr. Jones to come up and talk about the procedure part of them actually entering it. So from technical, anything regarding state or federal ID, so you have passports, state ID, driver's license, anything that has a barcode that can be scanned and registered to it. For individuals that wouldn't, I can mention in the system itself, you capture their name, first name, last name, date of birth, and it'll do the exact same thing because that's the information it's pulling off of the ID and the passport. So if they don't have any of that, then I'd have Mr. Jones or Ms. Carter kind of comment on the procedure of if they don't have one of those, what would be the next step?
If something happens in a building, how long does it take you to pull a roster to find out who's in the building?
So a couple seconds. If you're logged in if you're logged into the system, there's a tab on the left-hand side that says reports. You click on that as an administrator, and it shows everyone that's in the building.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I just note, I think we asked this question last time and was told that if an individual does not have an ID, that they would still just write their names. And I thought I remembered something similar to that.
They can put their information in there still, right?
They could still put their information in the system in some way. Mhm. Yeah. Could you want to speak it?
Visitor system.
Copley? Did you-
Copley High School, and they still have it in place. But they took it out of the high school because their students now have badge IDs, and it wasn't compatible with the Raptor, so they had to remove it from the high school. So this is nothing new. It's we're just behind the 8 ball getting started here. But a lot of our North families do not have IDs,
Yeah.
but they have something similar to a birth certificate thing that they type all of the stuff in. When they type in the information that Zach stated, it goes through the database, and then they just receive a visitor's badge while they're in there. So anyone that's in our building now will have this, and it's the same way as it is right now. When you write your name in, you write a visitor's badge, you stick it on you, and you walk around. If you don't have one of our safety team members or administrators or teachers, say, hey, can I help you? Because you're lost in the building. So that's pretty much what it is. Did I answer your question? Okay, all right.
Thank you. So I have one additional question. So I see what we have here for policy 9150 is our policy from 1998. Are there any changes to this policy, or is there anything that will require board action?
No, not to the policy. The policy refers you to the administrative guidelines for the management system of visitors.
I would just like to make sure that we have some uniform language that we use when we're making notes, so we don't get crazy notes on any individual, just some kind of uniform notes.
In
or
terms of,
guidelines?
Okay,
in
yes.
terms of the ones that would pop up for the secretary?
Security notes.
Or,
Well, the fact that you can make notes on any person, whether it's you could just make notes on a person, okay? And I just, that we would have some kind of.
Standardization around the way that it's written in there.
So they're not getting some.
Yes, we'll work with Mr. Hanshaw and his itinerants on making sure we train our school secretaries to ensure that there's consistency across the board of how we're making notations, because we want to be respectful.
Yeah.
Thank you. This has been a long, but I think a very productive discussion, because I definitely know a lot more about this system and how it's going to work than I did when we first started it. With that being said, is there anything else to add to this discussion? So with that, since there's no board action, I'm thinking we will remove this from discussion.
Okay.
Yes, Madam Chair, I would move that we move this from discussion.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on. Now we are at section 403, Neola updates.
Okay.
Attorney Kepchar.
Thank you. So we have been continuing to work through the number of Neola updates that we have and bringing them to the committee. The process is basically prioritizing them internally and then bringing them forward to the committee as we've done in the past. And what you have in front of you is really just a placeholder so that we are updating on the fact that we're working on those.
Is there anything so new or specific, or are you recommending that we leave this in discussion?
We can leave it in discussion at this time. Like I said, this is really just the summary of the Neola updates, but I think it's fine to leave it so that we remind ourselves that those are coming.
Yeah, Madam Chair, could you just note the numbers so that I know which one where are we? Is it volume 43? Number one?
Yeah, so the numbers that are associated with this is how Neola produces them. So the volume 43, number 1, October 2024, my goodness, is the volume we're working off of. And then we also have the Ohio Local Update Overview and Comments, which is the UGG, EDG, GAR revisions, which are also part of the October 2024 update.
Yeah, I see that.
Right, and then Senate Bill 29. So Senate Bill 29 is covered in a lot of these Neola updates. This is just a separate document because Senate Bill 29 had such a large impact on so many of the policies.
And Madam Chair, may I ask if you could just go over Senate Bill 29, just a real quick explanation, please.
Sure. So as a bit of a refresher, we we've gone through Senate Bill 29 and summaries of it before. I apologize. It's been a second since I since I reviewed this, but we had some changes to FERPA laws, some specifications, as well as updates to monitoring devices. That was a policy that we reviewed actually as far as our cell phone policy that we reviewed last month.
Okay.
And then some other things that have to do with data that's obtained through school-issued devices. So some more technical stuff there that we'll see in future policies.
So, Madam Chair, my final question would be, so are we up to date where we are? You feel comfortable that we're moving the Neola recommendations along? We're not causing any issues
Yes,
for the
yeah.
administration? And we're staying on top?
Yes, I
We
believe-
want to make sure that we stay on top of this.
Yes, I believe the administration's happy with the progression of the Neola updates so far, but we'll continue again to work internally to meet and review the updates that we do have.
Yeah, and then once we have to have it into effect, which I believe is in August, some of these things need to be ready. I know that Mr. Hanshaw, come on up, because he's already been preparing for the time that it goes into effect, where we have to have all the changes. He's already been preparing for it.
Yeah, that's exactly where I'm going. So I want to make sure that when it's time for us to make the move on this, that we've gone through the research. So you have your committee that's looking at this constantly, right, and bringing those to us. So when we need to act on these, we want to make sure that we are not holding up the administration, as we promised that we would not do, and that we would continue to stay on top of these things, because I know all of a sudden it's going to be a flood.
Yeah, that's the only problem, is that
Yeah.
we could be ready, but then we don't hear or get anything from the state for months, and then when it comes in, it's a flood of stuff. So.
Yeah, so just a couple comments on Senate Bill 29. Two of the major changes was in regards to how we provide public information to parents and guardians and regarding what technology we use in our district and what data we share. So we have to notify the parents and guardians by October or August 1st of each school year. We have a plan in place, so we'll have that notification beginning this first August.
Okay.
And the second part of that is how we're accessing school-issued devices. When Senate Bill 29 was first passed, there was some controversy around it in regards to how we access devices, monitor devices, and so forth. As of December 5th, a new provision has been passed that was rolled into House Bill 313 that has language changes around Senate Bill 29. So with it being passed, Governor DeWine did sign it in. So it's going to be making some additional changes to this Senate Bill 29 and Neola updates. So we're going to be keeping a close monitor in our internal committees. And then we're going to be bringing stuff. You're going to see some additional things in January around some policy changes, probably January, February.
Okay.
Sorry, so are we waiting for more information to come from the state then? Or is this the information that we needed?
No, so we will be waiting on additional information. So there's going to be this Neola update here was a change that occurred back in October when Senate Bill 29 was first updated. And then they had an emergency clause that was wrapped into House Bill 313 on changes on how we monitor devices. So with the new change, we're limiting for notification to only notify parents regarding health and safety reasons within a 72-hour period. All the other reasons, there's about 5 or 6 other reasons, I don't know them off the top of my head, but that was the passage that occurred. So Neola, I'm going to assume Neola is going to be pushing out some additional updates with those language changes so we can update our internal policies around it.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yes, so
Okay.
administration is still waiting for more information from the state, and when administration gets that information from the state, that information will be brought to committee, and the committee will be able to policy.
Perfect, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I do also, while this is in here, policy 5136, personal communication devices, is a policy that we had, that we already updated for the Neola review through committee. But it was not just Neola updates that were in that policy. There were administrative updates in that policy also. So that item is actually set for a third and final reading. But administration is going to give us a copy of the adjustments, so that way we can see which adjustments were the Neola adjustments and which ones were the administrative ones. Also, with the personal communication devices, that's the one where we talk about the yonder bags? Yes. Do we have in the policy, and I'm sorry, I don't have it right here, do we have in the policy what we do when we run out of yonder bags? I hear...
That's not in the actual policy.
No.
I'm hearing that we've run out of yonder bags in some buildings.
So there's there's a process that they need to follow the order. So what we can do, we'll need to reach out to buildings to make sure that they have that ongoing, constant communication with families on how to replace their yonder bags. So there is a process in place for yonder bag replacement.
Okay, because what I've heard is yonder is out of yonder bags, and that
Oh,
the
okay.
buildings cannot order anymore. So that when I visited
That's
Bookduel,
Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones, is he here?
Yes.
Oh, can you,
thanks.
I don't know, are we out of yonder, is yonder out of yonder bags? Or can you speak to Dr. Molinar's question?
Yeah, that's news to me because we just got an order in for yonder bags. So to my knowledge, yonder's not out of yonder bags.
Okay, thank you. Yes,
Yeah,
when
that's
I
all.
visited Bookduel a couple weeks ago, there was a security guard with just 100 phones in a box because they said they were out of yonder bags. So I
No.
thought, oh,
No, that's probably because the parent hasn't gone online and
To get a replacement
to get the
yonder bag.
replacement yonder bag. Has nothing to do. We have yonder bags.
So we paid for yonder bags.
Initially. Yeah.
Out of ESSER money
Yeah.
over the last 2-3 years. And we paid for it for this year. But we did, and we are going to again communicate to our parents, it's that they will have to pay for those moving forward. Because some of them lose 2 or 3 bags a year, and it's $20 every time, and we give them a new one. So now we're saying to them come next year that, we aren't going to be able to do that, so you have to pay for that bag. And the alternative is probably what you're seeing in the big case, that some of the kids are not wanting to replace them. Some of them break them. They've learned how to creatively get in them without following the proper protocol by going to the big magnet and unlocking it if they have to leave school. So we are going to communicate that again to our families, letting them know, because this was a part of like 2 or 3 years ago that when they started with the yonder bags.
yes, if that's something that we can put out as a large communication, how families can get a yonder bag. It might sound like.
Yeah, I did before school started.
Well, sounds like it might be something that could be done again. A yonder bag
Yeah.
sounds like a decent stocking stuffer.
We could look into that. So,
So maybe if people don't know how to order another one, maybe we can communicate.
Absolutely.
All right. So, any other discussion on Neola updates?
Nope.
Okay, moving on, we have no unfinished business. In new business, I see item 601.
Oh, Madam Chair, on the
Yes.
unfinished business, I would just move that we approve the minutes from our last meeting of 11/19/24.
Okay, thank you, yes. And now, new business, I see item 601, nepotism policy.
So I can speak to the attachment that you have in front of you. This is actually a sample policy from Cleveland Metropolitan School District. We reviewed a number of nepotism policies from similarly situated urban school districts, and the majority of them did have a conflict of interest policy and a conflict of interest policy only, which is what we do have on the books right now. This one differs because it's specific to nepotism. I know that CMSD uses OSBA instead of Neola, so that might be the reason for the difference. They have they cover different things sometimes. So this policy basically covers nepotism as it does in Ohio law. So Ohio Revised Code 2921.42 basically states this in a less clear way. So this represents a sample draft for the district to start with. We're happy to make adjustments to make this fit for the goals and intentions of APS. But at this time, it's a pretty basic policy that just covers the statute.
Any comments? Any comments? So what is the recommendation for this? I'm guessing this is a draft currently?
Yeah, this is definitely in draft. There was a small internal meeting where this was reviewed, and there were no changes that we had at that time. So this is purely CMSD's policy. So any recommendations that the committee might have or that administration might have further will be what we're looking for at roundtable next month.
Okay, so would the committee wish to move this to roundtable for January?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you. My only request, if we could have an idea of about where this would be situated.
Yep, that's not a problem. Thank you.
All right, is there any other new business?
No.
No? All right. Seeing none, policy status review. We have 3 policies heading to the January board agenda for a third and final reading. Policy 5136, 5200, and 8510. These are from our November Legal Policy Committee meeting. We have no policies heading the board agenda for a second reading. And then at our January Legal Committee meeting for a first reading, we'll have 5511 and 551101 together for the redaction of that. And items expected for discussion in the next committee meeting, we have 412010 independent contractors and nepotism and Neola. Does that sound like everything?
Yeah.
Okay. And with that, it is 6:18. So we are concluding our Legal Policy Committee meeting.
Madam Chair, I would just like to wish everyone a happy holiday season.